Today is Friday, February 6, 2026. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. Deadlines in the ransom note have passed in Savannah Guthrie's missing mother case. According to authorities, we'll have details on that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating. You can email us your thoughts as well. Our email address is quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. Glad you're here with us, getting through the news of the day, as we do each and every weekday bright and early. A lot to get to on the podcast today. Coming up on the focus story, President Trump plans to rededicate America to one nation under God. Trey and Raj have more on that coming up in just a moment. Also on the main thing, nuclear talks with Iran are back on, but only on Tehran's terms so far, as the White House turns up the pressure. New footage from Gaza raises questions about who's really breaking the rules of war. That's coming up on the main thing. I want to tell you about our sponsor right now, Christian Solidarity International. You know, we've been talking about Christian persecution, and it can be a little easy to make it it feels distant. Like headlines are happening around the world in places like Nigeria and China and elsewhere. But these instances are real, including, as we've talked about, in Nigeria, and militants, to give you an example, in one instance, stormed a Christian village. They burned homes and dragged families out into the bush. A young mother was taken captive. She was beaten, forced to cook for her captors, and separated from her children. This went on for months. Her family had no idea if she was even alive. That's when Christian Solidarity International stepped in, and working through trusted local pastors who told you that they've been building relationships. They're there for the long haul in many of these places. But working with these pastors who know the terrain, CSI actually helped locate where she was being held. They helped negotiate her release and then reunited her with her surviving family members. And then they continue to provide care, providing trauma care, so that she can get on the path to healing. This is what Christian Solidarity International does on the ground. This is why we've partnered with Christian Solidarity International, because we care obviously about Christians all around the globe. We especially care about these Christians who are in harm's way and experiencing extreme persecution like this. And stories like the one we just heard, they're happening right now. And that's because people like you are deciding to stand up and help. If you feel called to stand with persecuted Christians and help save people who are in the midst of this, go to csi-usa.org. It's csi-usa.org. You won't regret it. All right, we're going to go to the news now in 90 seconds, and we're on day 6 here of the search for Nancy Guthrie, and a key deadline tied to an alleged ransom note has come and gone with no confirmed contact. Investigators say there's still no named suspects, no verified communication from anyone claiming to have Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. Earlier this week, several media outlets did receive an alleged ransom message demanding millions of dollars in Bitcoin for her release. Authorities have not authenticated the notes yet and have not confirmed they're connected 100% to her disappearance. But according to those reports, the messages claimed Guthrie was okay but scared, and referenced specific details inside her home and included 2 deadlines. The first passed yesterday afternoon. The second is set up for Monday, reportedly. As we reported, law enforcement says blood found at Guthrie's home belonged to her, and a front door security camera is missing. A motion alert was triggered around 2 a.m. Sunday, close to the time her pacemaker last disconnected from her phone. The FBI is now working jointly with local authorities, offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to her recovery, stressing she is without critical medication. That is obviously one of the big top stories that we're covering right now. You can check out more stories over at cbnnews.com. We're going to go to the focus story now, and President Trump made quite the announcement about the spiritual path of the United States. I want to play you these statements from President Trump himself, and then Raj and Trey have reaction for today's focus story.
To support this exciting renewal this morning, I'm pleased to announce that on May 17th, 2026, that we're inviting Americans from all across the country to come together on our national mall to pray, to give thanks, and we are going to do something that everyone said, like, that's tough. We're going to rededicate America as one nation under God. You know, a lot of people... Yeah, thank you very much. It's good. That's what I mean by the Spirit. It's so incredible to see it. I see it so much. I've never seen anything like it.
All right, I'm joined by CBN's Trey Goins-Phillips. What did you think about that announcement, Trey?
Look, I think it's interesting. This is something that we have said from day one of Donald Trump, back when he descended the elevator in 2015. He's an unlikely champion, I think, of Christianity, right? He's somebody who is a brash business guy, a reality TV star. So it certainly is odd to see him making statements like this, even now a decade later. But this has been a huge part of his political rise. And I think it comes at a time, of course, when there's so many other things going on that have, I think, awoken a desire for spiritual things in the United States, and even in some parts of the rest of the world, especially in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination and how that shook up so much, not just of the conservative movement, but I think, Raj, the country as a whole.
I'm going to do something a little unorthodox. I have this feeling in the pit of my stomach where I feel like it's incumbent upon us, and if you're watching this, to relearn the foundations of this nation. I feel like there's been so much said that's just not true. Like, I'll give you an example. The idea of separation of church and state. Where is that in the United States Constitution? It's not. It's just not there. But I think if you ask most people, oh, the separation of church and state, that's in the Constitution. No, it's not. That phrase is not in the United States Constitution. Let me read you the First Amendment. And I think I just feel this like aching in my soul that I feel like we need to relearn that which our country was based on. And he even said he's going to rededicate America to its kind of founding principles. Here's the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That's totally different. And I feel like there's this attack on, okay, obviously the United States, like any other country, is just full of sin, full of bad decisions, full of wickedness. But I do think there's something beautiful about the foundation of this country. It's a unique thing, and I think we just need to relearn that which we're based on. And I'm going to read you a couple quotes, and I just feel like we're not getting this in our civics classes anymore. And this is from Benjamin Rush, signer of the Declaration of Independence. So if anyone tells you, oh, this country was based on deism or the Enlightenment, it's like, yeah, that's kind of true. But I think if you just re-examine, innumerable quotes from our founding fathers, this is a holistically Christian nation. That doesn't mean Christian nationalism. That just underscores that what our country's foundation is at the end of the day is Scripture. I mean, let's just go to the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. What? That all men are created equal. That they are endowed by what? Who? Their creator with certain inalienable rights. But here's a quote from Benjamin Rush, who signed the Declaration of Independence. My only hope for salvation is in the infinite transcendent love of God manifested to the world by the death of his son upon the cross. Nothing but his blood will wash away my sins. I rely exclusively upon it. Come, Lord Jesus, come quickly. Woo! Benjamin Rush is preaching, Trey. And then I got one more quote, Trey. I know this is a very unorthodox, but I just feel like this this call from the president is actually kind of more profound than maybe even he realizes. Here's one more quote from John Adams, our second president, also a signer of the Declaration of Independence. He says this: "The general principles on which the fathers achieved independence." That sounds important. The general principles on which the fathers achieved independence. And then I'm going to go right down to the punchline. What were these general principles? I answer: the general principles of Christianity, in which all these sects were united. We need to go back to our foundation, because we've been bombarded with all these messages that just want to undermine that which unites us, like e pluribus unum, out of many one. I feel like we're doing the opposite, like unum e pluribus, like out of one many. What unites us is this common understanding of America, and America is one nation under God. And if you don't like it, that's fine, but that's what makes this country unique. We're the only country, I think you can make the argument. I mean, you can make the argument for other countries, but that was really based on an idea, and that idea is that we've been created in the image of God, that we are one nation under God. And so, yeah, my heart's cry this morning, Trey, is just that we go back to uncovering and really understanding who and what founded this country, so that when we're bombarded with all these lies, we can have discernment and have understanding of, like, whoa, that's not true, or that's half truth, so that we can approach our nation's healing, hopefully, understanding where it came from and why it was created in the first place. But Trey, I'll give you the last word, my friend.
You know, Raj, I remember years ago when I was in college, and there's an international speaker that came into our campus, and he was speaking to the campus during an election year, as a presidential election year. And one of the things that he said has always stuck with me is he said, everybody around the world, whether you know it or not, is watching what you do as a country. He said, we are taking our cues from you as a country. He said, it's not that I'm not proud of my country. It's not that I don't think I come from a great place and that we're a powerful country. But he said, I think that you, just as Americans, need to be aware that the world is watching. They want to see what you're doing. And I think it just reminded me of Reagan, who constantly quoted scripture that said, we're a city on a hill, right? That's the United States was designed to be a city on a hill, because we are built on those Christian principles, to your point, Raj. And look, by the way, the last thing I'll say about this is it's ironic when people like the Freedom from Religion Foundation, for example, or any other anti-Christian organization starts to attack the very foundation and principles of our country, because they, just like you and me, Raj, have been beneficiaries of the freedoms that are guaranteed to them, because we are created, our country is created on the foundation of biblical principles.
Good stuff, guys. That is really absolutely spot on. And listen, regardless of how people may feel about President Trump, if you're a Christian, the sentiment and this notion of turning back towards God and rededicating to this nation, to one nation under God, is absolutely a step in the right direction. If we look at all the ills in society today, what do basically all of them stem from? And it's a turning away from God. And so turning back to God is a necessary component here of also having the country turn back on the right direction. But we are going to go to the main thing now, and U.S. negotiations with Iran are set to resume today in Oman after nearly collapsing. President Trump is warning Tehran not to miscalculate. CBN's Joshua Swanson has more on this from our Israel Bureau on today's Main Thing.
Negotiations with Iran are back on again. Hey everyone, I am Joshua Swanson reporting from the CBN News Desk in Jerusalem. Here's what's happening in the Middle East. After appearing to fall apart, the United States and Iran are now set to meet Friday in Oman for renewed nuclear talks after last-minute disagreements nearly derailed them. Iran says the talks will focus strictly on its nuclear program, leaving out other small issues like sanctions, Iran's support of proxy terrorist groups, including Hamas and Hezbollah, and the regime's violent crackdown on protesters. Earlier plans to hold talks in Istanbul with regional partners were quietly dropped, highlighting just how delicate and unpredictable this diplomatic process remains. The announcement comes as rhetoric from President Donald Trump continues to heat up. Asked whether Iran's supreme leader should be concerned, Trump didn't mince words.
I would say he should be very worried, yeah, he should be.
While also claiming U.S. military action wiped out Iran's nuclear capabilities.
Look, that country's a mess right now because of us. We went in, we wiped out their nuclear. If we didn't take out that nuclear, we wouldn't have peace in the Middle East because the Arab countries could have never done that.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio took a more measured tone, pushing back on Iran's narrow proposal and making clear that any deal worth signing would also have to address ballistic missiles, terrorism, and the treatment of Iran's own people. What a novel idea. Meanwhile, in Gaza, the Israel Defense Forces released drone footage showing Hamas operatives transporting weapons inside ambulances. The IDF says the video exposes yet another violation of international law and the ceasefire, this time using medical vehicles for military purposes. Well, joining us to unpack the on-again, off-again, and back-on-again negotiations with Iran is Alex Trayman. He is the CEO and Jerusalem bureau chief of the Jewish News Syndicate, and he hosts the Jerusalem Minute. He made Aliyah in 2004, and he joins us from Jerusalem, where he now lives with his family. Alex, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Alex, I want to know, Iran has agreed to resume nuclear talks, moving the location from Istanbul to Oman. Based on its history, is this last-minute switch and new location a negotiating tactic, or what does it reveal about how the Islamic Republic approaches diplomacy?
Well, President Trump has previously stated that the Iranians have never won a war and have never lost a negotiation. They are professional negotiators. This is part of the Iranian culture. They certainly would prefer a negotiation over a military intervention by Donald Trump. They have every motivation right now to continue negotiations, to stretch out negotiations. They're hoping that the longer President Trump goes without ordering a military strike, the greater the chances that he won't.
Well, Tehran wants the talks limited, of course, to its nuclear program, excluding, minor things like sanctions, supporting Hamas and Hezbollah, their violent crackdown on protesters. But what does Iran gain by narrowing the agenda in this way?
Well, I think that they're just trying to stall. They'd like to deal with topics one at a time. Certainly, President Trump has stated in the last few days that the nuclear talks are the most important. But as Marco Rubio and others have discussed, the ballistic missiles also represent an existential threat to Israel. We know that the Iranians have been trying to rebuild their ballistic missile capabilities. And certainly what the Iranians have done to the innocent civilians who are protesting against the economic conditions in Iran, including a lack of water, including a lack of electricity. They've killed, according to some estimates, anywhere between 80 and 100,000 protesters. And Donald Trump has called this a red line. He said that he has those protesters' backs.
Yeah, absolutely tragic. So back to President Trump, given his tactics, how does this pressure, knowing that he will use military force, how does this differ from, say, the Obama era or past U.S. negotiations with Iran?
Well, past presidents, everyone starting, I guess, with Jimmy Carter and through Barack Obama and Joe Biden have tried to negotiate by releasing pressure on Iran. And the Iranian and the Middle Eastern negotiating tactic is that when you release pressure, they ask for more. So I think President Trump figures out that you need to have the inverse relationship. You need to put maximum pressure on the enemy and the opponent or the adversary in a negotiation in order to get to a meaningful compromise.
Well, given the environment here in the Middle East and how different the culture is, that maximum pressure seems to be a tactic that's working. But what should we expect in terms of the outcomes? I guess, what are your predictions as far as the outcome of these talks?
I wouldn't think that you're going to get any kind of a meaningful outcome here. I think that the talks are likely to break down. This is the nature of these types of talks. I think that President Trump's patience level with the Iranian regime is very, very thin right now. In fact, I think he might be using negotiation as a stalling tactic for the U.S. military as they plan a intervention inside Iran. You want to make sure, I think President Trump wants to make sure that any attack is successful and decisive and leads to a change in the regime. So they may just be trying to put all of their ducks in a row, also creating the conditions whereby he tells the international community, look, I gave negotiations a chance. I tried to avoid this war. It's the Iranians that backed out of the negotiations, leaving a military intervention as the last resort.
The quote of the day, Alex, nothing meaningful will come out of these talks. As always, Alex, your insights are very valuable to us, and it's great to have you on. Thanks for joining us so last minute to break down today's Middle East news. So if people want to learn more about you, where should they go?
JNS.org and to our JNS TV YouTube channel.
You got it. Thank you, Alex. Well, that's the latest from Jerusalem. For continued coverage, analysis, and stories that you won't hear anywhere else, follow Jerusalem Dateline and CBN News on social media. And if you'd like to support our reporting and stand with Israel, you can do so by donating to cbnisrael.org. That's cbnisrael.org. What we do here is donor supported. So if you're blessed by the news that we spread, please consider supporting us. I'm Joshua Swanson. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.
All right, great reporting, Joshua. Appreciate that there. And yes, absolutely make sure you are, if you're blessed and you feel blessed by the news that we bring you each and every day, we are donor supported. So please consider joining us and coming alongside us and help us continue to bring you this news from a Christian perspective. We appreciate you as well. All right, that's going to leave us with time on the podcast today. For one last thing, we're going to take a look at Matthew 7, verse 21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. So this is in a section where there's a lot of instruction going on, and one of them is to beware of false prophets, and talking about by their fruits you shall know them. So being aware and being discerning of who really is a follower of Christ. And of course, we can't know everyone's hearts, but we can judge by the fruits that we're seeing and get an indication of that. So something for us all to consider as we head into the weekend. I hope you all have a great one. Make sure you're getting on over to cbnnews.com, faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. Also, make sure you're checking out csi-usa.org, our partners helping persecuted Christians. God bless. See you back here Monday.